You heard John 20 read. It's the story of the resurrection. It's one of my favorite stories. I've preached on it a lot. And coming to it this time, I came up with 3 words that I just want us to wrestle with a little bit, because I think this is what the resurrection does for us. Jesus does for us, the raised Jesus. Number 1, he brings belonging. Number 2, he brings mission. And number 3, he brings authority. Now, when you look at these 3 words, if they aren't part of your life, you're depressed, right? You don't have purpose and power, right? You don't have peace. Because where does peace come from? Belonging. When I know I belong to someone, there's a sense of peace. When I know what I'm supposed to be doing, I have a sense of peace. When I know that I have the authority to do it, there's a sense of peace. Right? So I want you to hold on to these 3 words, because this is what Jesus brings. Right? And I want us to just walk through the story, and I'm not going to read it to you because you heard it and it's 30 verses, so I'm going to narrate it a little bit. Right? But before we get there, I want to talk about the tomb, because 2 weeks before today, I was kind of trying to prep for the sermon and begin to ponder it and think it through, and this picture just kept coming into my brain. Because when I come to Easter, this dark hole, this tomb, is kind of where I am. And it's where Mary was, right? Mary of Magdalene, Mary Magdalene. She decides at about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, because she couldn't do it on Saturday, to go finish taking care of Jesus' body. And so she heads with some other women to the tomb, and she sees that the stone has been rolled away. Now, it doesn't necessarily indicate in the text that she immediately looks in. I am not so sure. So in my imagination, I'm thinking, I know from other texts she does, but in this story, the thing that kind of hits me is her immediate reaction is to run. Right? Now, why would she possibly run? Well, there are 2 things that could have happened if the stone is rolled away and there are no guards. It's that the enemies of Jesus have come and mutilated his body more, and it's going to be gross in there. Or 2, the grave robbers have come and they've just taken everything. Right? Either thing, it's kind of anxiety producing. And as I was thinking about this, I come to Easter in a sense with this empty tomb feeling inside of me. Right? Because the thing that the world pokes at, the thing that my own subconscious pokes at, is that, hey, Eric, you don't actually belong. Right? You don't really belong. And you know what? Your purpose isn't that big. And really, do you have any right to do anything? This is the narrative of the world. This is the narrative of the enemy. This is the narrative of my own psychology. Is that I don't belong. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't really have the authority to figure it out, right? So that's what I bring to Easter, and I wonder what you bring to Easter, what you bring to this empty tomb. Mary runs, right? Mary runs. And she runs to the disciples, Peter and the disciple that Jesus loved, and we're just going to shorthand him as John. Most people think it's John. It's a really weird way to refer to yourself, but John likes it, so there's some reasons why he does it that way. But Peter and John run, right? And Peter, I think, is probably a little bit older, a little bit heavier, a little bit bulkier, and he probably doesn't have the same cardiovascular system as John does. So John beats him to the tomb, but John doesn't jump in and look right away, right? And Peter just comes barreling by and knocks him over. I don't know if he knocks him over. And he looks in, and now here's the important part of things that I want you to hold on to, is that it says he saw. And it's not like he just looked around, he's like, oh, okay. No, he was investigating. So he saw, and he saw that the things were laid out a certain way. And that word for saw actually means study, examine, right? So he was checking things out. He was examining them because he hadn't made the connection that Jesus was going to raise from the dead. And then John comes in, and he sees, and he looks around, and then he leaves, and Mary stays. And I want to just suggest to you that they leave in three really interesting spaces. We'll work backwards. So Mary, after everybody's left, is crying, and she's mourning. But what is she mourning? She's mourning the loss of the man who transformed her life. Now, here's a little factoid you probably don't know. Magdalene, or Magdala, is a little like, it's a fishing village. There's actually 3 of them. They don't really know the one that Mary Magdalene is from. But the word actually means tower, or fish tower. And a fish tower, these towers that they put right at the edge of a lake, and someone would climb up and they would point and they would say, oh, there's where the school of fish is, and they would try to like signal so the boats could get to where the schools of fish are. Jesus liked nicknaming people. And there are a lot of Marys. In fact, half the women were probably named Mary. So he's like, you're Mary the Tower, right? Which became who she was in the church, a tower of strength. She was at the foot of the cross. She's at the tomb. She's in Jesus' crisis moments. And yet she's mourning, and her mourning has no resolution. There's nothing, all she has is loss. This man, Jesus, who delivered her from 7 demons, Mark tells us in Luke chapter 8 tells us, so she's just there weeping. Peter, I think, has resignation. He looks in, the tomb is empty. He's like, whatever. He probably goes home. He sits with his wife. He says, well, that was kind of a waste of 3 years. Maybe I'll go back to fishing. I mean, this seems to be Peter's attitude. He does go fishing. You're right, the next week. And John believes, but guess what? His belief has no power, right? It says they didn't realize what Jesus had said about the resurrection. So yes, he believes, but he didn't go, oh, I belong to Jesus and he's risen from the dead and I need to go tell people. No, his belief had no power. The resignation had no power. The mourning was pointless in a sense. She's lost